I think Ayrton Senna is the greatest Formula 1 driver ever. It's certainly a controversial thing to say because he isn't even in the top 5 most successful ever, with only 3 titles. The whole debate around who is the greatest ever is a hotly contested question, which will never truly be answered. But in my eyes, greatness is about so much more than just success. For example, when Senna died in 1994, over 3 million people lined the streets for his funeral. That's more than the likes of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Princess Diana combined. And the fact he died at the age of 34, arguably in his prime, means he probably would have gone on to win more titles. So, let's push Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher aside, and let me explain why Ayrton Senna is the greatest Formula 1 driver the sport has ever seen. So firstly, for those new fans who have just joined the sport and aren't fully aware on who Ayrton Senna is, let me tell you. He was a Brazilian racing driver who was born in Sao Paulo, Brazil in March 1960, and after blowing away all competition in karting and single-seaters, he made his debut in Formula 1 in 1984. In his 10 years in the sport, he won 3 titles, 41 races and stood on the podium 80 times, driving for legendary teams such as Lotus, McLaren and Williams. And in my eyes, he was the Lionel Messi of racing, meaning he could do things that no one else was even able to come close to. For example, in his debut season, he finished second at the Monaco Grand Prix, having started 13th. Also in a Toleman, which at the time was the equivalent to a Williams today. Basically, he had no right to finish where he did. Then again in Monaco 4 years later, he took pole position over his 2-time world champion teammate Alain Prost by 1.4 seconds, which is a lifetime in Formula 1 terms. Or we can look back at the 1993 European Grand Prix, where in an uncompetitive McLaren, he went from 4th on the grid to 1st place in 1 lap, overtaking everyone with absolute ease, and going on to win the race. And to this day, that first lap in Donington is seen as the greatest lap in the history of the sport. Now, those are just 3 examples of numerous occasions where he was simply untouchable by the rest of the field. So, briefly going over his career, Senna made his debut for backmarkers Toleman in 1984, and impressed enough to get the call up straight to race winners Lotus. And well, over his 3 years at Lotus, he took his first win in Portugal, winning by over a minute. But sadly, his Lotus was plagued with unreliability, and so he wasn't able to challenge for the title. But it was when he joined McLaren in 1988 that Senna achieved incredible amounts, winning 3 titles in 1988, 1990 and 1991, with the 1998 season being up against then 2-time world champion Alain Prost, which was truly a fight for the ages. But towards the end of his McLaren days in 1992 and 1993, he was unable to fight for a title due to the dominant Williams car that had a revolutionary suspension system. And so, for the 1994 season, he made a blockbuster move to Williams, in the hope of getting his 4th title. But sadly, his career was cut short when at the 4th round of the season in Imola, he crashed while leading the race and was killed. The whole motorsport world was shocked that a man as legendary as Ayrton Senna could be taken from them so quickly and in such a brutal way. Every driver on the grid was in absolute admiration of Senna, firstly because he was incredibly talented, but also because he was a man with so much compassion. 2 years previously, at the 1992 Belgian Grand Prix, his fellow competitor Eric Comas was involved in an incident, and when Senna drove past in his McLaren, he noticed Comas was still unconscious and realised the engine was still running. Realising Comas was in danger, Senna stopped by the side of the road and ran across the track, almost getting hit by oncoming cars, to turn off the engine and save Comas's life. And so, when Ayrton died, many drivers were even hesitant to continue racing. To this day, it was easily Formula 1's darkest moment. And well, when people debate around who is the greatest of all time, they immediately say either Michael Schumacher or Lewis Hamilton because of how much they achieved. But as I mentioned at the start, greatness is about so much more than just being successful. It is also about legacy, and Senna's legacy is unrivaled. Not only would he risk his own life to save his competitors' lives, but he also donated millions to help Brazilians in his home country get out of poverty and help those less fortunate than him. And still to this day, the Ayrton Senna Institute is helping the poorest in Brazil to improve literacy and escape poverty. And this was reflected by the amount of people that turned up to his funeral. To put it simply, Senna was nothing less than a god in Brazil. And besides, if Senna had never passed away and had his career cut short, he could have become a 6-time world champion. Seeing as in the 1994 season, Senna's teammate at the time, Damon Hill, went on to almost beat Michael Schumacher to the title. Then if he were to stay at Williams, it's very likely he would have gone on to win the 1996 and 1997 titles as well, seeing as Williams was the most competitive car in those years. Now, I'm sure many people wouldn't agree with those statements, but Senna was one of the most naturally talented racing drivers in the history of the sport, if not the most naturally talented. And so I really do believe had he not passed away, he would be up there statistically with both Schumacher and Hamilton. And not to mention, Ayrton Senna is Lewis Hamilton's lifelong idol, and so if it wasn't for Senna's inspiration, Hamilton maybe wouldn't have achieved as much as he has. In essence, what I'm trying to say is Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher are probably the best of all time thanks to how much they achieved, but when thinking about the greatest of all time, well, that involves so much more than just wins and championships. Greatness is about what you leave behind and the effect you have on those around you. And well, Senna is not only worshipped by everyone in Brazil, he is adored by hundreds of millions of people worldwide. And that is something that success can't buy. And that is why I believe Ayrton Senna is the greatest Formula 1 driver of all time. But I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. And of course, as always, make sure to like and subscribe and smash that notification bell to be reminded of any new videos.